Hello cruel world, my name is Dr. Sohom Das. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders for a living so that you don't have to. Today's video is going to be about the tragic case of Amy Winehouse. The reason I picked this topic is because it's coming up to the exact day of the 10-year anniversary of her death. In fact, depending on how quick my amazing editor Katie is, it might even be released on this very day. This day holds significance to me because it's actually the same day that I got married 10 years ago. Amy Winehouse died of alcohol poisoning, and it was no secret that she had her demons, she had her problems, her breakdown and her downfall was very public. Families, fans, friends, lots of people were worried about Amy Winehouse. So this video is going to address the question, could they have forced her into rehab? The answer is going to shock you. Not really, it just sounds like something I should say to make you continue watching. How successful is rehab generally? And what are the formal psychiatric symptoms of addiction, which is technically known as dependency syndrome? And what are the best and worst Amy Winehouse songs, in my humble opinion? I'm going to answer all of these questions and many more in this episode of A Psych for Sore Minds. Sit back, relax, and let's get on with it. So first of all, a little bit of background on Amy Winehouse and just a quick overview of her life to put everything into context. Amy Winehouse was born on the 14th of September 1983, and she was born in Enfield, which is literally exactly where I live. I'm in Enfield right now making this video. Her family grew up in Southgate, which is really nearby. This is all in North London, by the way. And I literally was in Southgate a couple of hours ago having a coffee. And her family was full of music. There was always music around, from her father singing Frank Sinatra songs to her uncles being jazz musicians. She was actually into hip hop and R&B, which is a woman after my own heart. And she went to a special theatre school because her parents recognised the talent at a young age, but because of her behaviour, because of answering back, because of even getting her nose pierced, she got expelled from that school. Also a woman after my own heart. And one of her friends heard that an A&R from a record company was looking for a female vocalist, so they sent in a demo tape of Amy and she got snapped up, she got signed to Island Records, and she was actually managed for a time by Simon Fuller. Simon Fuller, along with Simon Cowell, together created Pop Idol, although as far as I'm aware, Simon Fuller didn't wear his trousers quite as high. On a side note, I absolutely hate Pop Idol and everything it stands for. I think it is damaging and insulting to the UK British music industry, but enough about that. I will save that for a rant when I'm finally emperor of the whole world. In 2003, Amy released her debut album, which was called Frank, and it was a massive success right off the bat. And it got double platinum status, which I'm sure you'll agree is pretty amazing for a solo debut artist. But unfortunately, as Amy's success and fame grew, so did her problems, and her substance misuse started taking over her life. She started turning up to shows too wasted to perform. Then she married Blake Fielder Civil, who was a very bad influence on her. They would physically fight each other regularly. He introduced her to drugs, he introduced her to the lifestyle, and he ultimately led her down this path of addiction and destruction. So her managing company tried to convince her to go to rehab, and she literally fired them. So she actually when they tried to make her go to rehab, she said no, no, no. But shortly afterwards, she released her seminal album Back in Black in 2006, and again, it was off the charts. It became a massive success. She won loads of awards, and it remains to this day the highest charting album of any solo British singer-songwriter. In fact, in 2008, she won 5 Grammys, which equaled the record that was set before by Beyonce. But then her life started spiraling out of control, from addiction to fights to serving jail time for possession and for assault. And then Amy married Blake in May 2007, and then she started getting into harder and harder drugs. In fact, she had an overdose in August 2007, and the toxicology report revealed lots of different substances in her bloodstream. And that same year, she cancelled her US tour and then later had to cancel her European tour. I think this was like the beginning of the end. This was a major part of her downfall because she let down her fans. And in 2008, she was arrested on several occasions. To give you an example of one occasion, she assaulted 2 men who apparently saw her outside a pub and were trying to call a taxi for her, and she thought they were trying to do something dodgy and were being sexual predators, so she attacked them. She got arrested for that. She assaulted several other people, including a fan asking for an autograph. And then, tragically, at the age of 27, she died on the 23rd of July 2011, as I said, from alcohol poisoning. And the pathologist later said that her blood alcohol level was so high that it would have put her in a coma and would have decreased her breathing rate. As you might know, 27 is a significant number because a lot of famous pop stars have died at the age of 27. A lot of them have had drug addiction problems. A lot of them have had mental health problems. If you're knowledgeable, please let me know in the comments which pop stars or rock stars you know of who died at that particular age, and your theory of why that keeps happening. So could anybody have forced Amy into going into rehab against her will using, for example, the Mental Health Act? So the Mental Health Act originated in 1983 and then it was amended in 2007, and in case you're interested, it's actually going through another round of revision right now, so there is going to be a new Mental Health Act within the next couple of years. There are lots of criteria that somebody has to meet if they're going to be sectioned against their will. I'm pretty sure I've done a video about the process of being sectioned somewhere on this channel. Go check it out. I'm not going to go through it all now, but to be very brief, to give you an example, the patient has to be detained and treated in hospital either for their own health, so their health will deteriorate if they're not medicated, say if they've got schizophrenia, or for their own safety, so for example, if there's a risk of suicide, they might kill themselves if they're not hospitalized, or the safety of other people. So to give you an example, if somebody's hearing voices, if they've got schizophrenia and they're, say, attacking their neighbors or attacking strangers, that's a very common presentation of what I personally see in my role as a consultant forensic psychiatrist. However, this is the important bit, so pay attention, kids. There was a change when it got amended in 2007 so that a mental disorder cannot include promiscuity, immoral conduct, sexual deviancy, or alcohol or drug addiction. So that means alcohol or drug addiction does not count legally as a mental disorder to detain somebody under the Mental Health Act. I think there's a whole debate about whether drug addiction is a mental disorder, whether it's voluntary or what degree it's voluntary. Same with alcoholism. That's a whole can of worms I don't want to get into right now. I do discuss it to a degree in one of my alcohol videos, but what I'm saying is legally, according to the Mental Health Act, it's not a mental disorder. But it would have been before the amendments in 2007, so many years ago, potentially Amy Winehouse could have been detained against her will and forced into detoxification, forced into rehab. So to summarize, could they make her go to rehab? No, no, no. The other thing I'd like to say is even if it was legal to detain her, as it is in other countries, not in Europe, but in other places of the world, let's face it, it very, very unlikely would have changed her ways in the long term. She might have gone through detox, but if you don't have that internal motivation to actually want to get over your addiction, then it's almost impossible for that to happen. Because even when people have that motivation, the success rates of going through rehab are actually depressingly low. So how low are they? So in 1995, there was a study by the Department of Health using the National Addiction Centre, and they followed people up 5 years after they had gone into rehab. And roughly about 47% of people that went into residential rehab stayed abstinent, so they stayed away from drink and drugs, whereas only about 35% who had community rehabilitation managed to stay abstinent. So the majority of people fell off the wagon within 5 years. I'm sure that number would be much higher for a longer follow-up period. The difference, very briefly, is that residential means, just like you see on TV, that the patient actually lives there for weeks or months, so they're there 24 hours a day, observed 24 hours a day, not allowed to have drink or drugs brought into the rehab at all. Whereas community rehab, one of those places of which I used to work as a junior psychiatrist, the people go home but they come for like daily treatment, breathalyzer tests and like therapy throughout the day. So they have a lot more freedom in the community rehab, which probably explains to a degree why it's not as successful. So that was in 1995, and they redid the study 20 years later in around 2015, and the percentage success rates was pretty much roughly the same. So what do I think of Amy Winehouse's music? I have to say it's not the kind of music that I would generally listen to, but it felt quite real to me. I actually felt her emotions. It feels like the things she talks about, whether it's rehab, whether it's heartbreak or relationships, actually feel like she's telling us a real life story that she's experienced. Whereas a lot of the other singers around that time. You've got your Adele's, your Britney Spears. To me personally, I didn't really buy what they were singing about. It felt fabricated. It felt like it was just constructed to sell and to make money. It didn't really feel like it came from the heart like Amy Winehouse's music did to me personally. Also, I thought the production was really good. I think the beats were fat, not kind of overproduced and tinny like all music sounds to me nowadays, which is showing my age. But again, I'm going to save that rant for another time. So what are my favourite songs by Amy Winehouse? I have to say F Me Pumps is probably my favourite, and You Know I'm No Good is my second favourite. All the famous ones, REHAB, Back to Black, were okay, but I don't think they're her best work. And my least favourite Amy Winehouse tune has to be Valerie. I just don't really like the dun, dun, dun. It's a bit kind of annoying and her voice is a bit grating. It's a bit too funky, the instrumental and the background music. I prefer her skill and ability and just purity of her voice as the main driving force of her tunes, not these annoying little trumpets. But anyway, I want to know what you think, dear viewers. Tell me which of Amy Winehouse's tunes you like or you don't like in the comment section below. Thank you. Okay, so I've told you about the very tragic case of Amy Winehouse. To conclude and to educate you a little bit, I'm going to tell you about the formal psychiatric definition of addiction. So how can you tell, or how can a psychiatrist tell if somebody's addicted versus somebody that's just using a heavy amount of substances? So this isn't just about the amount of substances people take, because that's variable. Some people can drink a lot but are not addicted. Some people, especially if they're quite small, can actually suffer from addiction with relatively small amounts. So here are the features. Number one, a strong desire or a compulsion. So a true addict will just have this huge craving at times where they just really want to take the substance. Number two, difficulty controlling their intake. So some people can just go to a pub after work for one pint and that's fine. An addict will have that intention in their mind, but they won't be able to stop or control their drinking, so they'll just escalate and they'll be there at 3 in the morning taking shots, half naked, dancing on the bar. Number three is very important, is withdrawal. So that's a physiological and a psychological state of withdrawing from that substance. So the next morning or a few hours later, you feel this like absolute intense anxiety, and the only thing that you know that will get rid of it is taking that substance. That's really important because that's what makes alcoholics drink early the next morning, to stop those withdrawal symptoms, and then they have to keep their blood alcohol level to a certain degree, otherwise they get withdrawal. Same with other substances. Number four is tolerance. I'm sure you know what tolerance means. It means after a long period of using that substance, the amount that you need for the same intoxicating effect increases over time. So basically, you get to handle your drink. Number five, neglect of other activities. That's an obvious one. So a typical addict will prioritize getting hold of their substances above everything else, above family, above work, above looking after their children, etc. And number six, quite an important one, is persistence of substance use despite the harmful consequences. So even though they know that things in their lives are being ruined, they carry on taking it, they just can't help it. So if you have experience of any of those things, or if you have experience of addiction, either yourself or somebody close to you, if you don't mind sharing, let's keep the conversation flowing by telling us a little bit about your experiences in the comments section below. Okay, I'm just about at the end of this video. Before I finish, I want to briefly introduce you to this channel. This is a Psych for Sore Minds. I am Dr. Sohom Das. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders in courts and in prisons and in secure psychiatric units. This channel covers a whole range of topics related to mental illness, sometimes related to criminality, because that's my speciality, sometimes related to more typical issues and topics. I interview ex-patients, I talk about different diagnoses, talk about high-profile cases, I talk about some of my own cases, but I anonymise them out of respect for the patients. There's something for everybody on this channel. Right, I'm done. Please remember, stay euthymic, and do not forget, I love you.